This is Connected Farmer, and we are going to discuss the impact of the grains beaten down this week and also the South American weather right here with Jerry Gidel on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, what a week. Everything turned out to be red on Friday.
Oh, did it ever? Well, interestingly enough, short weeks always can provide some erratic price activity, and we sure had it. Well, we came in with the defensive attitude last weekend because of the fact that the forecast did have some rains for South America, primarily Argentina and parts of Brazil, and it didn't turn out to be anything hardly at all. It continues to rain too much in Paraguay, southern Brazil, places like that, and so a combination of too wet and too dry gave us a good pop back on Monday and most of Tuesday, relatively speaking, from there. But the forecast that had rains earlier in this week turned around. It had more rains really forecast towards Thursday night into this coming weekend. From there, from that standpoint, even the rains that were forecast for Thursday Thursday night really didn't provide much at all in that important area of Goiás and Mato Grosso. Maybe there's a quarter to a half an inch at the most that I could see in the weather updates I saw. Now, to some extent, when you have long stretches like that, sometimes you don't always get all the areas covered. But even then, it didn't seem to make a big difference here. On the market's attitude. We really had a lot of traders on the sidelines, had a lot of people with stops in the market, and the market's easiest way was to find those stops below the market and push things down pretty impressively. Actually, we took soybean prices back down to the lows we had earlier this fall. Felt we had maybe a reverse head and shoulders going. Instead, we got to hope we got a double bottom on this January beans going. I kind of feel like we do. There's a lot of uncertain situations down there, and I think there still is some demand ideas and issues that are still ahead of us. But this week definitely had things beat up. We also had some other interesting things happen that we'll get further details on that added to this setback.
Yes, you mentioned before we started recording that you expect another shot for soybeans to reach close to $15 a bushel, but I think it will come because by seeing all the photos of the southern Brazil floods, you can tell there will be significantly reduced soybean areas.
Yes, it's getting to the point right now where there's reduced time to really replant or to turn around and maybe even switch over, particularly wet areas. It's you lose plants, then you turn around, you can't get back in there to do it. If it continues to rain, you're really just set with what you have. And to some extent, this situation, not that the southern parts of Brazil couldn't kind of handle some double crop because of the weather not being as severe as the northern areas. Because really, once you get past late April, early May, you've got to have a corn crop up there that's pretty well advanced. Otherwise, it could be very vulnerable to lack of moisture when it's trying to fill out and could be very small. So you're definitely right. That there is some vulnerability. The biggest problem right now is that the trade out here between the holidays and the attitude that soybeans always seem to do better than you expect and that type of thing. But the twist of it is that the type of beans they plant in South America are beans that are determinate, I think, that decide that, okay, we plant them and there's so many days from the time that it's planted till it's time for it to mature, and it's going to be whatever it is. The North America can sit back and wait a little bit longer on some rains to develop and still have some decent yields, and it means we might harvest a little bit later, but it's a slightly different style of soybeans that are planted in South America. So I think that's always an issue that sometimes traders and market participants, speculators just don't totally grasp it, that soybeans and plants in South America have a certain length of time that they're going to be able to put on bushels, if you will, in that. And sometimes that means that you're going to have less bushels. But right now, at least, that seems to be one of the factors that has kept people on the sidelines here. We'll see what happens the next, what this weekend's rain turns out to be, and that type of thing. But interestingly enough, in the latest export sales that came out this week, which were down from some of the huge numbers we had in last week because of the Chinese buy, and they still bought another 750,000 tons that really wasn't on the radar. And so now we're up there shooting approaching 5 million metric tons on overall purchases. So I think that's a positive, relatively speaking, in the world of demand out here. Unfortunately, the Chinese were such slow buyers this year that we're still behind last year's, but we were way ahead of last year's pace versus the year before. So I kind of feel we're still on target for a pretty solid year of Chinese buying.
Yes, and another issue that I don't want to skip is Argentina, because the floods are affecting Argentina, and wheat is being affected still because some of the wheat is not harvested yet. And Argentina will get a brand new president, a libertarian president, and it seems like the farmers and the grains will get back to this international market.
Yes. Well, that kind of started this week with his election there on Sunday. I think that also added to the uncertainty of the corn and soybean prices that helped rebound things. His general statements ahead of the election, which did calm down a little bit later on as we got closer to the second runoff here, and that everything was going to be switched off the peso to the dollar, which is going to be a significantly hard thing to get done. And how soon that'll happen is going to be important as heck, if it does, or how much it does along the way from there. So that's definitely a factor that I think added to the emotions on Monday and Tuesday. From there, the other factors in here is that the people running for office always have lots of good ideas, and when you get in to try to govern, it's not as easy to churn the changes of long-time trends in countries and one way or the other as to what can or cannot be done. But I think that to some extent, the idea that he's promoting that less taxes on the agricultural exports, and that good concept is going to help expanding their potential around the world, and at the same time, it will hopefully give more money to the agricultural area. This has really been beat up over the last 20 years. Is that has been, unfortunately, the only way that the government could really get steady funds to operate was utilizing the exports, because they could make sure that it got paid before it left. While, unfortunately, the populace in Argentina and the general restaurants and businesses and stuff like that always don't seem to have enough money to pay the government their taxes. So that hopefully that maybe this will prompt a little bit better compliance along the way, so they can ultimately have enough money from there. But then that's the whole theory that we don't need as many money when you're libertarian. You can all live off the ground, off the land. So hopefully, everyone's making optimistic ideas, but we'll see how far it goes along from there. That particular issue is going to continue to be a factor here in the markets. Weather-wise down there, yes, there's some ups and downs in the weather in Argentina too, particularly the northern area, northeastern areas close to Paraguay, and that the wheat harvest is not showing any real positive ideas here that they're going to have any extra bushels on wheat. Their corn plantings in the first crop have slowed a little bit because of dryness and that. So definitely lots of things up in the air in Argentina, both in the agricultural practices and also in the agricultural prices.
Yes, and another thing that happened this week was that the energy prices went down despite all what's going on in the Middle East. But I think the market is pricing that this war is not going to spread throughout the region.
Well, it seems like an optimistic approach here, all right. And to some extent, now having a ceasefire while they get some of these hostages switched back and forth here this current weekend is a somewhat positive thing going on. The biggest thing right now is that there's not much resistance left in Gaza at this point. So I'm not sure, they really bombed the complete place into oblivion over there at this point. So we'll see how that all turns out per se, but the potential for Yemen and Saudi Arabia to get further involved in this thing and try to support Hamas, which to some extent brought all this on themselves with their initial foray into Israel and that. So it's a tricky situation, but at this point, it looks like that the powers that be are not going to come rescue Hamas and defend the people in Gaza at this point. Unfortunately, and it's not so. That's not the way it should be. But unfortunately, that situation is going to spiral downward for the Palestinians and Hamas at this point. From there.
Yes, and what are you expecting for next week? Then we have a full week again.
Wow, exactly right. That's going to be an interesting scenario. I think the one thing that we haven't discussed, which really was kind of out of the blue that hit this market on Friday and knocked the beans down one more notch, was a decision from a U.S. appellate court to basically knock down a EPA procedure they announced here. God, it must be 2 years ago, right after the present administration came into power here in the U.S. And it was involving the small refiners in the U.S. They got quite a few waivers and things like that about not having to get ethanol into their particular gasolines that the previous administration decided that they didn't need to do that. Well, the Biden administration said that everybody needed to provide ethanol into their gasoline, not having differences for big or small producers and that. And so, interestingly enough, and I'm not totally sure I understand their reasoning, but the appellate court decided to go ahead and side with the small U.S. refiners, primarily in the eastern U.S., so that they didn't have to provide ethanol at this point into their gasoline for the next stage. Eventually, somebody had to do that because, of course, every particular gasoline, there's still many, I think 89% of the U.S. has 10%. And there's also ideas that the present administration, because of what's going on, has decided to slow down their idea of going 15% ethanol. I think this whole scenario is all balanced out with the reality that that they're trying to keep the ethanol business together as we have less and less gasoline demand and we switch towards electric vehicles and that. And so there's talk that, we'll have higher 15% category. And to some extent, the people that want to tell you your engine's going to fall apart at 15% versus 10, there's no evidence of that issue. But in reality, the U.S. energy and big oil definitely have used every angle they can to make sure. And of course, they're trying to stay in business like everybody else is in this world of changing demand and exports along the way, or energy demand, I should say, not exports. But anyway, that's the kind of final thing that snuck up here on me and Friday was that once that these waivers were going to be potentially open. The problem is it's not going to happen. They're still going to go back to the next level, and it's not going to change anything in the near term. But the market beat it up the last final straw there on Friday when that announcement came to the marketplace after the holiday from there. But price-wise for the coming week, wow. I kind of feel like that it all depends on how much rain we do or don't get in Mato Grosso, Goiás, the northern areas of Brazil, and that if it's another poor showing, I got to feel like this market's going to be able to bounce back again because of the fact that despite many people in South America still trying to be optimistic that, we started out at 163, maybe 164 in some of the projections from most of the analysts in South America. They begrudgingly have taken down 1 million or 1.5 million, maybe 2 million different times over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I kind of feel like that there's one U.S. analyst that has a lot of good contacts. He's down at 158. I think that number is probably the top side of expectations, in my opinion. If that moves on down further here and we don't get the rains that are supposed to be happening, we don't get these beans being planted on a big surge here at this point to finalize their situation, I kind of feel like that South America's output numbers that were so solid and good last year are definitely not off to a very good start. So I think this market's going to be very sensitive to the weather in South America, and also to some extent, the ongoing Chinese and Mideast issues are going to continue to happen. I'm kind of anticipating this market to kind of hold its ground at these levels and see what it can do over a little later than normal. The one thing we will have is that the U.S. Mississippi River system is, there's lots of concerns about this going into winter with very little moisture in the river, and then you don't get a lot more, and that the issues on being able to get crops out of the U.S. down that major artery is a major factor yet. There's lots of added expectations that a lot of stuff is going to move to the Pacific Northwest. Even one port up there is trying to open up and get itself in position to export soybean meal, which we're going to need to do here if we're going to continue to expand our renewable diesel scenario. So there's lots of different things in the air. So let's see what this coming week does. But right now, I'm hopefully we're going to see some stability and maybe some bounce back in these prices here after the holiday.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet. Let's enjoy the rest of this weekend. Unfortunately, we're supposed to get some snow tonight. Ooh, yikes. Way too early. We had some on Halloween, but at this point, a little bit more logical to have it here after Thanksgiving. Overall, in the last 3 or 4 years, we have a lot less snow than we've had in the past. I kind of like that trend, to be frank. You have a good weekend, though.
All right. In the Northeast, it will take more time, but it will come here too.
Yes, the snow might show up yet. Maybe Maybe you'll get that on Sunday night into Monday. That's what you need to look forward to, just when you're going back to work.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, guy.